Okay, let's get into applying some triplanars to our gray render. Okay, let's just begin with perhaps one of these brick textures. I think this one is slightly better, white brick. And let's go into our IDs and maybe from our normals, let's pick up all of the red, and then if you click Control plus Shift, all of the blue. So we have everything except the green values. Just deselect these. And now here, let's select this and click to add a layer mask. And our white bricks are only applied to the X and Z facing normals. So just things that are facing sideways. Then we have a couple more variations of different scales of these same white bricks, but let's go into our red bricks maybe. And these two appear to be the same. Let's have a look at these scales. So, yeah, we have a slightly smaller and larger version, but I quite like this. I really like the texture here that we're getting. So, okay, how about first of all, let's try applying this just to the green channels. So, everything facing up or down. Okay, that's maybe cool, but here, I'll show you how versatile this way of working is. If I decide that I want the opposite look, I can just select this mask, invert it, and select this mask and invert it. And now we have a rather different looking picture within just a few clicks. Right? And that's my favorite way of working with these techniques, is that you can really remake your entire look of your painting in a very short span of time. So that's quite useful. But for now, let's keep these as they were. But I think I'd like that texture here to return, even though elsewhere I quite like this distribution. So maybe let's select the reds and the blues. And let's just go in here. And if we click Control plus H, we can hide this selection, but it will still be working. And if I click Control H again, it returns. So for example, here you see I'm painting just within the selection, and if I click Control H, I'm still painting just within the selection. So I think let's paint this texture in here, and this is sort of where you get to do a little bit more bespoke work in order to make your artwork more unique. Let's do it like this. Okay, something like that. And let's look at our other textures. Well, first of all, here's a little problem with having used this texture. It's not very high quality, as we can see here. So what we can do is select one of our textures where we had made the UV projection smaller, and thus these bricks are much more high quality and also lifelike in terms of scale if you compare them to all these balconies and houses. These were not very correct, but what we can do is we can click Control plus Alt plus G to parent this to this. And what we can do is we can go into our blending options, and in the underlying layer of the blend if function, we can drag this lever down, and the underlying image keys out your current layer. So, for example, if I drag from this side, everything that was the brightest starts getting keyed out first. So we want about this much maybe. And let's click Alt and drag one of these sides to make this a little bit smoother. Then, if we disable this and let's just have a look at our white brick textures, we can see that these are also rendered with tighter UV maps. So let's just copy this one and also put it above our main red bricks, and let's just click Ctrl-Alt-G to parent it again and go into blending options, and this time key out the dark areas. So what we're doing here is keeping the rough outlines from this projection, but also picking up the higher detail from our other images in the areas where we want it. Okay, so next up, let's go to maybe marble. And I think as this is such a bright color, we will want to use this to really, I guess, draw attention to certain parts and paths along the image and lead the viewer's eye from here all the way to here and to the center here, as well as from here hopefully along this path, perhaps here. So I know I won't want to use this too much. I'm going to use it sparingly on specific objects instead, because it is a very eye-catching color in comparison to our previous ones underneath it. What I think I'm going to do is, I'll actually create a layer mask for marble first and then invert it, clicking Ctrl+I. So now the alpha mask is all black. And then I'll go into my normals and grab my green upwards facing normals. And now, if I click Ctrl-H to hide the selection and select hard round brush, make sure the opacity is at 100. I will paint white color, you have to have white selected here, and reveal the marble where I want it specifically. But it would always be along the tops of objects, because I think I quite want to have paths highlighted, things like that. So for example, like here, let's zoom in a little bit. Actually, first let's paint all of this. And then maybe here as well. And as you can see, because we're using the IDs, and because the triplanars are rendered in the correct perspective, we can do a lot of matte painting very quickly and very easily compared to the traditional method where, you'd want to either A, paint everything yourself, or B, texture everything yourself. This way is a good, quick in-between between those two paths. So yeah, we can do all this. And I'm really just aiming to highlight certain elements that I think are interesting and would do a good job of briefly grabbing the viewer's attention and shifting their line of sight to where I want it. Okay, here as well maybe. If you click X, you can switch colors and then paint black to erase what you've just done when you're in the alpha mask mode. So that is very useful. Let's do all this. And it's quite satisfying to do as well, actually. You get a lot for very little effort. You know what? Let's do all of these. Then maybe we can make some outlines to make it look like this was painted. Just clicking back and forth with Shift held down allows you to kind of make straight lines like that. So we're just doing that to get this to look nice and straight. Okay, that's quite cool. Maybe let's go and paint even all this. Well, let's keep this bottom area dark. So this white kind of snakes along. Maybe could even draw notice to this. Like so. Okay, and then let's zoom out a little bit. Let's work out a slightly larger scale to begin with. Let's kind of draw this path of white all the way over here as well. And this kind of highlights those little rooftop lines very nicely. And then on this side, let's do a little bit as well. I quite like highlighting these stairs, I think, because they bring this sort of dynamic to the image that isn't there otherwise, where we have some of these objects at a 45-degree angle, so it kind of bridges together all of these levels slightly. So I quite enjoy drawing attention to them, I think. You know, those kind of little elements that connect the pieces of your image together, it's nice to have them slightly worked out in a logical way, you know, where you kind of have them be noticeable as transitions a little bit, so that the viewer's eye catches on them. Okay, don't worry about the water. We're gonna fix that in a second. So that's quite cool. Maybe if I go, I think I have a ID for stairs somewhere. Yeah, red are stairs. And with that selected, I'll just paint them here and here. Maybe even, no, okay, no. Maybe let's disable the Z for now. This might make it actually slightly clearer. Let's paint these all white. And these ones here. And maybe even here. Let's select our green channel again. And paint through it. Always try to make sure that at least some of what you're painting follows the geometry, because it really establishes the shapes better than if you were just to do it randomly. Okay, let's do it like this. Okay. So, one thing that we kind of need to fix is the water here. So, I think what we should do is grab our water ID, select all blue, and then here we'll select environment baseline, click Ctrl+J to duplicate the layer, and we'll put it above our triplanars, just so we have the water over everything being done here. And I think also here, from the distant light, I want to cut out the water and apply it using a different blending mode. So I'll click Ctrl+Shift+J to cut it out and put it on another layer, and I'll set it to linear dodge, and this is more of a look that I want. So let me just rename this distant light water, and I'll put them in a group and call this distant light. Okay, let's make this blue again. Okay, that's slightly cleaner. So now here we can paint without worrying about going onto the water again. Let's paint just a little bit more white. Maybe let's go for blue. And here I want to highlight something slightly over here as well, just to have a little bit more interest up top in terms of the textures. Okay. These buildings as well, I think a lot of them can go white. This is one of those things where you can play around with this quite a lot, and if you were to redo the same thing twice, you would never manage to do it the same way, because you just get into all of these little details and painting them bit by bit. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, and it's easy to get carried away sometimes. Okay, maybe just a little bit more along these edges. Not quite like that. Okay, so now all of these white bits kind of lead in the direction of the center, and they really bring out the different, I guess, canals and things like that. Awesome. So, what's next? I've got some stone, which this is slightly odd, and while I used it slightly when creating the original piece, I'm not even gonna get into it because it's really not worth the effort. And I have another stone texture, which I've projected at a very large scale, but even though it's very low quality and all of this is blurry, I thought it might give me some variation in texture that I'll be able to control with this later on. So I kind of thought it's quite cool if I change the layer style to overlay, and then I get some values from it. And if I set the opacity to maybe 50%, this kind of shows what I mean. randomizes things slightly. Yeah, not a big improvement, but something. Maybe I'll make it a little bit less saturated. And you can access hue and saturation by clicking Ctrl+U, by the way. So next up, we've got wood. And wood, I would like to be applied to... Where are they? Yep, my piers, which are blue here. Click OK, and then, yep, all of my piers down here are now all wood. That'll do for now. I might apply it to more things later. Then I've got dirt as well. Actually, let me just for now disable the ambient occlusion as well. I think it wasn't helping here. So if we look at dirt, I kind of want to apply this in all of the cracks and whatnot, in between all of the geometry. So I think what I'm going to do is take my ambient occlusion and I'll make a copy of it and just set it to normal. And actually, I'll keep this up here, make it violet so I don't lose it, because this will come in useful a few times. And with it enabled, I can create a new mask for my dirt. And if I just go to Image, Apply Image, okay, this view right here, right now, is getting applied to the alpha mask of the dirt. So what I want to do is I want to click Ctrl+I to invert it. And so now our alpha mask will mainly be in all of the edges and cracks. So I think I want to maybe go to curves for the mask and just increase this a little bit. So now if we look, we're getting a little bit of dirt in all the cracks. And actually, I want to take my grass, and I think I'll just copy this mask that I just made for dirt and apply it to this as well. And so, yeah, grass, more importantly, now kind of covers all of these little niches and crevasses, which makes the city look slightly overgrown. And what we can do in addition to that, quite cool, is if we duplicate our grass and we just take the alpha mask and bin it. Oh no, actually we don't want to do that. We want to click A to select all, delete that, deselect and invert, and then let's just bin it. So we have this extra layer of grass, and I think if we go into blending options, and here from underneath I key out the shadows. Oh no, actually let's go from above. So let's key out all of the highlights like this, and let's smooth it a bit. So now our highlights have no grass appearing, but all of the shadows do. And what we can do is we can create a new mask, invert it to make it black, and let's just make a slightly random brush like this. Oh. Yeah. We can paint in some additional grass here, for example like this, to make this more overgrown. You can do this entire area. And I think let's click to do a curves adjustment on this layer. Let's go to Image, Adjustments, Curves. And let's just make that grass a little bit darker. And here it's not just serving the purpose of grass for me, just really any kind of moss or overgrowth, that kind of thing. So let's do a bit of that. we can make quite a bit of this overgrown. Here maybe on these, could have it going around the edges. Oops. Yeah, okay, maybe like this.